राम राम
हरे राम 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 सीता राम 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 राम राम
सीता राम 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 सीता
राम राम राम
सीता राम राम राम
सीता राम राम राम
सीता राम राम राम
सीता राम राम राम
सीता राम राम राम
सीता राम राम राम
सियावर रामचंद्र की जय पवन सुत हनुमान की
जय
बोलो भाई सब संतन की
जय
श्री राम जय जय राम लाउडली श्री राम जय जय राम
श्री राम जय जय राम
श्री राम जय जय राम
राम जय जय राम
श्री 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 राम जय जय राम
राम जय जय राम
श्री राम जय जय राम
राम जय जय राम
श्री 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 राम जय जय राम
जय जय राम
जय जय राम
जय जय राम
जय जय राम
प्रिय सियावर रामचंद्र की पवन सुत हनुमान की
जय
बोलो भाई सब संतन की सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय जय राम जानकी राम
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 रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम
रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम
रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम
रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम
जय जय राम जानकी राम
जय जय राम जानकी राम
श्री राम जय जय 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 राम
श्री राम जय जय
Hari Om everyone. Can you all hear me and see me clearly? Hope you have had an amazing week and a weekend. So I was expecting a lot of questions on this chapter called meditation. There are only 2 questions so far. So let's go with that and see what's the answer. What are the questions and what are the answers? We will start with the prayers and then take the questions and justify them with the answers. So please join me for the invocation. Let's start. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. So the first question is asked by Siddharth, and he apologized for not being here and that he would follow up listening to it. So I'll take that question. I have 2 questions, and that if I dismiss one question because of absence, then I'll be left with only one. It'll be a quick class then. So his question is, in the Vishnu Sahasranama, Shiva Sahasranama, the 699th name of Bhagwan is Samyataha. And there is a great scholar, Neelakanta Dikshitar, in his commentary upon this Sahasranama, especially on this particular 699th one, he says, Dharana Dhyana Samadhi Samadhiman. So there is Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, and the one who has attained these 3, Trayam Ekatra, the one who has attained these 3, such one has Samyama, and therefore the name of Bhagavan is Samyataha, the one who has Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So this is the explanation of that name. Now the question. Swamiji has already discussed Dhyana and Samadhi. Would Swamiji please discuss Dharana and how these 3 together constitute Samyama? Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, these three, as mentioned here, is from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we find there are 8 limbs, 8 steps. And these 8 steps start with Yama, Niyama, then Asana, Pranayama, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. These are Bahiranga Sadhana. Whereas the Antarika Sadhana, the internal sadhana, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Now in Bhagavad Gita, very clearly it is mentioned that both the yoga and jnana lead. There, the interpretation that has to be understood, or the translation or the meaning that has to be understood, that yoga purifies the antakarana, where it yokes the entire antakarana and purifies through the eightfold step. And having purified, that purified mindset, purified antakarana, is thus qualified for knowledge, thus qualified for the experience of one's own true nature through that knowledge. Now, there, when Patanjali Rishi is using these words dharana, dhyana, samadhi, there dharana means, the root word is to dhru, through which even the root word is for dharma. So dhru means to be able to uphold. To comprehensively uphold something is called dharana. What has to be upheld in this particular yoga sadhana? In the yoga sadhana, when one has performed the asana pranayama, mind reaches, our own antakarana reaches to a certainty of quietude. And in that quietude, and there also in that quietude, very clearly he says that there is Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana, that the mind has to soften itself. The rough edges have to be taken out with the practice of Bhakti Yoga Sadhana. Meaning one has to be able to dedicate that ego, surrender that ego at the feet of Bhagavan. Ishvara meaning Bhagavan. Now, the seeker has to now comprehensively hold. Comprehensively holding what? The pranayama and the thought. There are several methods that Maharshi Patanjali indicates to form this dharana. There is the method of focusing the drishti on a burning flame. It is called trataka. I'm taking one of the methods. There are several pranayamic techniques. So there is trataka. Trataka, wherein you focus on this flame to a point where initially it hurts because you're keeping the eyes open, you're not shutting the eyelids. So after a few moments, few minutes, it will start hurting. You have to cross that threshold without blinking the eyes and still be observing. And then your eyes shall start watering. And after that, after a several long period of practice, you will reach to a point wherein you will easily cross this pain and water, the tears swelling up and flowing, and that will also stop. Then there is that place wherein that flame you are able to focus upon without being chanchala, without being wobbly, and that focus, that ability to hold on to that flame through the observation, through the watching of it, is one method. There are several methods indicated. Through this dharana, what happens is the mind, which has constantly the habit of multitasking, wherein we jump from several things, even when we are watching TV. If there is an ad that is coming here, then we flip to the other channel and it is easily available in the backstroke, or there is a PIP and you immediately shift to that and then come back to this. We keep shifting, shuffling. And if you are watching YouTube or anything, the shifting, shuffling, and flicking through it is a constant practice. So the mind is in interaction, in the field of interaction, is constantly subjected to multitasking, wherein there is no single point focus, but it keeps flipping between various points of focus. Now that has to be undone. When that has to be undone, then there is this dharana as a practice where we undo the uh, constant flickery nature, constant wobbly nature of the mind to keep jumping from one subject to the other, one object to the other, one experience to the other, to bring it to one focal point. And then the object of experience, or the focus of goal of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra through dhyana and samadhi, is to reach to the point of, which has already been declared in the beginning stages, in the very second sutra of the Yoga Sutras. In the very second sutra, the first sutra is the Athato Yogam Vyakhyasyamaha. Then the second sutra is Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha, is to reach to a state of quietude, is to quieten the mind. Now that quietened mind, those words which are used in yoga sadhana are similar looking but not with the same meaning. So that has to be first understood. So dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, you have reached to that quietened state of mind. Now what Adi Shankaracharya ji says is, this quietened mind is now qualified to reflect upon its own true nature, understand it, abide it, and experience through this knowledge and wisdom. So here also we use similar kinds of words. And when I say similar kinds of words, therefore one has to know with reference to what are we speaking to. Whether it is dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which is the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which has its own defined terms and utility. Whereas in the Advaita Vedanta, when we use the dharana, we don't use dharana, but we use the dhyana as nididhyasana and samadhi. So that would be the difference. Now samyamaha, the one who has yama, control, samyama, comprehensive control on every aspect, wherein with the flick of your finger you can come to that point where the mind is quiet. How lucky, right? To get to that point where you can quieten the mind and bring that sharpness of mind to one focal point. Yoga sadhana does that. And that mind has to be applied into the field of vichara, into the field of this Atma Jnana, Nididhyasana. And to the end goal of this Nididhyasana, yes, the mind is quiet, but that is not the point. The point is to reach to the awarefulness of one's own true nature. I know I am, and I am that blissful nature, the existential state of being, and that state of being is my true nature. That is verily the substratum of this entire creation. So I hope I have given the comparison and the standpoint. So if he has any questions, he has to reach out to me later. But hope introducing all this topic, I have not further confused all of you. Now move to the second question. The question is asked by Tanu, and I will answer your question after reading it out. You mentioned in the previous satsanga that sleeping and closing eyes in meditation is not the same. You defined that meditation is a process by which we remove the previous thoughts and beliefs to fully internalize whatever we are learning. Now I'll pause here because there is that clarity that has to be given in what it means when I say internalizing. It is not internalizing a thought or a conviction. It is to subjectively experience my own true nature. It is not the same as internalizing a concept or an idea. So that difference has to be understood. And when I say that it removes previous thoughts and beliefs, these are not just thoughts or belief system. It is the convictions, the vasanas which erupt us in a habitual error. Those habitual errors are observed and wiped clean in that nididhyasana process. Now, having made that distinction, now I'll get into your question. Scientific research suggests that there is a lot of processing and unlearning going on in the brain while we are sleeping. According to the Hindu scriptures, what is the function of the sleep? In Vedanta Shastra, when they are talking about sleep, they are not analyzing the state as to what happens in that state, but they are analyzing it with the comparison that there are three states of experience that we have. The first state being the waking, where the mind is active and engaging itself into the outside world. The dream state is where the mind is active and it is engaging with a field of projection of its own creation. And that aspect of the mind which is talking about having a projection, it is not interacting with the world outside. It is creating a world of its own and it projects that. Whereas in the deep sleep, this functioning aspect of the mind is withdrawn. There is no functioning of the mind. Now, your question is about the brain. We have not touched the brain part. The brain part is glad that it doesn't stop functioning when we fall asleep. Otherwise, we'll all be in ICU just with the thought of thinking of going to sleep. Brain dead should not be, or brain stopping should not happen. Brain, thank goodness, even though we are asleep, most of the internal organs, even the heart or the other organs, they function flawlessly even when we fall asleep. So the brain activity continues. As it continues in the waking world, as it continues in the dream world, it continues to do its processing in the deep sleep state as well. Now, the functioning also helps when we talk of sleep in Ayurveda. For most of the medication, what they do is they try knocking you into a sleep through that medicine, so that in that deep sleep, there is enough opportunity for the internal organs to repair themselves, which the brain actively send signals to repair that aspect of health which is not in the right condition. The brain activity continues even though it is in sleep. So we consciously make that difference when we talk in Vedanta. When we talk about mind, we are not talking about the brain and its activity. That's a physical instrument. This is a subtler faculty through which we process the thought, process the emotion, process the information that comes. Brain is kind of a vessel in which this software functions. That is the hardware, this is the software. Brain is the hardware, mind is the software. Now, I hope I have answered and it is to your understanding. If so, Tanu, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, good, thumbs up. Now, coming back to the next question, next part of the question that you have. Here we say, you asked, how can we process each and every piece of information we receive in the waking state? It is impossible almost to process all the information that comes. It's almost impossible to do that because we receive in gigabytes of information per minute. It's about 4 to 5 gigabytes of information that we receive. Now to process 4 to 5, just to give you an idea, 4 gigabytes is like 1000 songs, average songs that you play on your playlist. There are 1000 songs to process every minute, that much amount of data coming, it's almost impossible. But what does our mind do? It takes up the required information from all these data points that come in of the highest probability of the data, that which we think or which we feel is necessary for us. Now, what we think as necessary, the others might challenge if it is necessary or not. Each one processes it differently. Now, I'll give you an example how this happens. It was Puja Gurudev's lecture, and my job as a young Yuva Kendra member way back 30 plus years ago, my job was to distribute, leaflets, flyers, info material to the people that have come for Gurudev's talks as they are leaving. My job was one of those who would stand and distribute it. So as I would distribute, I would get a glimpse of people. I am a nobody standing there distributing it, a young kid who is distributing it. They very unconsciously take the flyer from me, but they are still talking to each other. They come in groups and they're talking to each other. And that is where I get a glimpse of what they have grasped in that particular. There was this one huge group of about 15-20 students with an elderly gentleman, and they used to come regularly. About the second or third day, I understood that elderly gentleman was their teacher, English teacher, and he would bring his students for a project or a homework. That every student's job, after listening to the 1.5 hours of Gurudev's lectures, you would pick new English words from the vocabulary that Gurudev has used. They are not interested in Vedanta. They are not interested in spirituality. They are not interested in Bhagavan or Bhakti. They have come there to pick on new English words and its use. And there are words that Gurudev used to use which were not very commonly used. So he would say, for example, the first time I heard rendezvous, and that was a completely new word. Rejuvenate, that's a new word. A dollop of humility will take you a long way. I said, a dollop? What does a dollop mean? So we used to carry these pocket-sized dictionaries and immediately flick through and just see what that word meant. These people were there purely to write these new words that they hear and how it has been used, so that in the next day's classroom they use this vocabulary to understand English. Their purpose was to process that information only to understand English. There were these people that would come down to write down Gurudev's jokes, anecdotes. They are also not interested in Vedanta. They are not interested in. They would be interested in only those. They jot down those. So how we process each bit of information, it varies from person to person on what we think as the highest probability of what makes sense and what is of utility to us at that given point of time, with that maturity at that given point of time. So how do we process this much information? Most of the, about 99% of the information that we gather is not paid attention to. Of that which is most important for me is what is handpicked as though, and then we churn it into one continuum of experience and make sense with the world outside. I'll give you another example. There are many times that in a rushed moment we want, say, our car keys. You knew that you saw them last on the center table in your living room. So you have put on your clothes, you have put on your shoes, now you're searching for your keys, you can't find them, you're getting irritated by the second, and then you yell out saying, "Nothing stays in the same place where I live. Where the heck are these keys?" So the lady of the house, she is the super manager. She knows where everything is. I'm talking of the mother of the family. So the mother reaches out, I mean, yells out. She also uses the wireless and yells out, "It is on the center table." And you say, "I know it should have been, and it is not there." And says, "Yes, it is on the center table. If you can move those newspapers, it is there underneath." The newspaper was in fact not covering it, but because my processing of the data that I have was not focusing on the newspaper, I did not see it though it was there. Even with the information that comes, it happens. Like if you're doing accounts and there is this Excel sheet where you have numbers after numbers after numbers, and you're trying to make sense of it, that the baseline is not matching up. So you go through the entire thing and it doesn't. And when somebody with fresh set of eyes looks at it, they say, "Yeah, this the decimal level is in the wrong place." And the moment you change it, everything comes into picture. Why were you not able to process it? It's because at that given point of time, with that maturity of mind, you could only process that much. Sometimes it happens, right? At night, uh, you're tired through the day and people are speaking and you are like, "Man, I don't think I'm in a condition to process anything further. I am dead beat. I'm done. My processing is not happening. I'm not able to understand anything that you're trying to say." So we pick on that points which are highest probable, which makes sense, and to that we add a continuum, and we feel that that which I am experiencing is through that continuum of my understanding of whatever I have processed through the data that I have received. So that would be the answer to your question. Is that sufficient enough a clarity, Tanu? Okay, good. So now we are at 7:30. I will entertain one question if anybody has. Please raise your hand and let me see. Many of you have turned your video off, so I can't even see you. But you have to turn your camera on, man. Hemant.
Sorry, Swamiji, I'm on the road. Otherwise, I would definitely turn my camera on. I mean,
Oh boy.
if Swamiji wants me to turn my camera on, I will. But
Don't. I am even scared that you are driving and asking. Are you driving?
it's very. I'm stopped right now at a light, so it's fine.
Holy cow! Please ask your question quickly.
Yeah. So actually, the main thing for me was, specifically after reading Upadeshasara and the part about Ashtanga Yoga, I was just I've been wondering this for some time. What does it really mean to achieve that state of thoughtlessness, samadhi rather, like while actually having a living body?
It's almost like asking, how does it feel for somebody who has satiated hunger? Or how does something taste? It is a very subjective experience and a very personal experience. Having said that, the point of experience through that Ashtanga Yoga, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi is to reach to that point wherein mind has now reached to a point of quietude within. Gurudev explains it very beautifully in a book called Meditation and Life. He calls that as like a lake with no ripples, no waves. It's a quite a eerie thing. Like if you look at the backdrop right now, there are waves, ripples. There is a movement. There is a time when, if I know we were in Mangalam, there is a unique phenomena that used to happen in the lake, especially early in the morning. It would have mist around, and the entire lake would be like frozen. There would be absolutely no movement in that lake, not a ripple, not a movement. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember. I can't ever forget that.
So a similar thing is with the mind, where you have complete quietude and you are awareful. You are at peace. But as soon as we step out into the field of activity, our peace gets shattered. For most of us initial sadhaks. For an advanced seeker who has established in the Dharana Dhyana Samadhi, which Patanjali Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga teaches, is you continue with that quietude from where you can actually be a witness of everything that is happening around you. If you remember, during the YUP course, there is one specific word that I talk about, is to create a sanctuary of silence within, unshakable silence within. That is ascertained and experienced through this Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. I hope these words make some sense getting across, because I'm trying to talk about an abstract thing which is a subjective experience into the words where it should make some sense to you across.
I understand, Swamiji. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We will stop here and we will continue next week with the questions from me and you can answer them. So see you in the next week. Sad we are stopping 25 minutes. If you had asked questions, we would have continued. So we will stop here and continue next week, same time with the satsang. Om Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you everyone. See you around in the next satsang.